On my 45th birthday, my wife took me to a restaurant and ordered for herself, then told the waiter, "He'll just have water. He's watching his budget." The waiter laughed uncomfortably. My son said, "Dad's used to being starved." I chuckled and said, "Yeah, I guess I am." When we got home, there was no cake, just a sticky note that said, "Maybe next year." This morning, she asked me why I never smile in family photos. They say 45 is supposed to be some kind of milestone, a marker of stability, success, family, all that jazz. But when I turned 45, I found myself sitting at a restaurant table with my wife of 22 years, our teenage son, and an awkward silence that hung in the air like a wet rag. It was Dana's idea. "Let's do something nice," she said that morning without looking up from her phone. "Dinner. You pick the place." But then she picked it anyway. Some fancy little place downtown with candles on the tables and music playing softly like we were in a perfume commercial. I knew the moment we pulled into the lot that it wasn't about me. We were barely seated when the waiter came by, a young guy with slicked back hair and a name tag that read, Julian. He looked straight at me first, probably assuming I'd be the one ordering. Before I could say a word, Dana put her hand up. "I'll have the duck confit," she said, snapping her menu shut. "And he'll just have water. He's watching his budget." Julian paused. His smile faltered for a second, unsure if he was supposed to laugh. Then he let out a soft chuckle like he'd heard the joke before. Our son, Blake, leaned back in his seat, his arms crossed like he was watching something unfold on a stage. "Dad's used to being starved," he said with a smirk. I let out a small laugh. "The kind you use to defuse a bomb you know is already too close to your chest." "Yeah, I guess I am." I didn't order anything after that. Just sat there sipping water like it was some kind of punishment I'd earned. The two of them talked about school, Dana's work, some cousin's upcoming wedding. I nodded where appropriate, laughed when expected. By the time we got home, I already knew how the night was going to end. There was no cake, no card, not even a happy birthday muttered under breath. Just a single sticky note on the fridge in Dana's familiar sharp handwriting, "Maybe next year." I stood there for a long time, holding the fridge door open with the lights spilling onto my face. Like maybe I was looking for something in there I couldn't name. The next morning, she asked me why I never smiled in family photos. "Because I don't recognize my life in them," I told her. My voice cracked, but I didn't let her see it. She raised an eyebrow, brushing her hair back like I'd just spoken in another language. "You're being dramatic again." That was always her line when I tried to talk about things. "You're being dramatic." Like my feelings were just some kind of performance. But I wasn't acting. I hadn't been acting for a long time. It didn't used to be like this. We met in college. She was this firecracker, sharp tongue, big plans, all confidence and charm. I was quieter, studied mechanical engineering, kept my head down. She pulled me out of my shell, said I was dependable, and that she liked that about me. We got married a year after graduation, moved into a small rental on the east side of Pittsburgh. I got a job working maintenance for the city, and she started in PR. Back then, we were happy. We didn't have much, but we laughed. We dreamed. But dreams change. Somewhere along the line, I became background noise. The guy who mowed the lawn and fixed the sink. The man who came home with sore hands and dirty boots while she scrolled through Instagram looking at lives shinier than ours. It wasn't a single moment. It was little things. A missed kiss. A door left open. Her phone lighting up at 2 a.m. with names I didn't recognize. And the silence. The growing, humming silence between us that filled the house like a fog. About a year before my birthday, I started noticing patterns. Dana would be working late a little too often. She dressed nicer when she left the house than she ever did when we went out. She changed her passwords, started locking her phone. Then, one night, she left her laptop open on the couch while she was upstairs on a Zoom call. Out of habit, I closed it, but not before I saw his name, Victor K. There were dozens of emails. Some innocent, some not. Some downright filthy. But what hit me hardest wasn't the content. It was her tone. She laughed in those emails. She flirted. She used pet names I hadn't heard in years. She called me dead weight. Said I had no ambition. That I was comfortable being a nobody. I stared at the screen like I'd been punched. It wasn't just betrayal. It was contempt. Quiet, long brewing contempt that had taken root in her somewhere along the way. When she came downstairs and saw me holding the laptop, she froze. But I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. Didn't demand answers. I just closed it and handed it to her. "Thanks," I said. That was all. That silence was my way of telling her I knew. And she knew I knew. And from that moment on, we stopped pretending altogether. I started making plans. Not revenge. Not yet. Just preparation. I took extra shifts. Opened a separate account. Talked to a lawyer during my lunch breaks. Started tracking expenses, logging her messages, backing up anything I could get my hands on. I wasn't looking to ruin her. I just wanted to be ready when she decided to finally cut the rope. But she didn't. She kept playing the role. Wife, mother, suburban queen. And I kept being the ghost in the house she once loved. Blake, meanwhile, was changing too. He was spending more time with her, parroting her words, treating me like an afterthought. I didn't blame him. He was a kid, but it cut deep. One night, I was fixing the faucet in the downstairs bathroom when I overheard them talking upstairs. She was on the phone. "Yeah, I'm stuck here for now," she said, laughing softly. "But once Blake's off to college, I'm out. There's no spark left. He's like wallpaper." That word again. Wallpaper. Not a man. Not a father. Just something on the wall, faded and silent. Then came the night everything broke open. It was Dana's parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and she'd organized a big dinner party at some event hall. Rented the space, hired a band, even got custom napkins made. I showed up in my one decent suit. Blake wore a blazer he clearly didn't want to wear. Dana looked stunning. Red dress, gold heels, that perfect smile she reserved for crowds. And then I saw him. Victor. He stood near the bar, chatting with one of Dana's cousins like he belonged there. Like he was family. My heart didn't race. It didn't break. It just stopped caring. I walked up to the mic. The band had just taken a break, and all eyes turned toward me. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight." I began, my voice even. 50 years is a long time. Not everyone makes it. Some of us don't even make it to 25. Nervous chuckles. "I'd also like to thank Dana for organizing all of this. She really went above and beyond, including inviting her special guest, Victor." Heads turned. Dana's face went pale. Victor shifted uncomfortably. Victor's been a great support to Dana this past year, especially during all those late nights she said she was working. "Right, Han?" She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "No need. Just wanted to acknowledge everyone's effort. Transparency's important, don't you think?" I stepped away from the mic and walked out into the night. The cool air outside hit me like a wave, thick with the scent of rain on asphalt. I didn't rush to the car. I didn't look back. I just walked until the muffled music and clinking glasses faded behind me. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. "Blake." I ignored it. Then Dana called. Ignored that too. I drove home in silence. No radio. Just the hum of the tires on the road and my own heartbeat in my ears. I don't know what I expected to feel. Relief? Rage? Maybe some kind of twisted satisfaction. But all I felt was tired. The kind of tired that wraps itself around your bones. I walked into the house, kicked off my shoes, poured a glass of whiskey, sat on the couch with the lights off. The front door opened 20 minutes later. Dana stepped in, heels clicking against the hardwood. She stood in the doorway for a second like she wasn't sure if she should come in. "You didn't have to humiliate me," she said, her voice flat. I took a sip and didn't look at her. Didn't have to cheat either. There was a pause. "It wasn't like that," she said quietly. "No." I finally turned to face her. "You writing love notes to all your coworkers?" She dropped her purse on the counter. "I was lonely, Ronnie." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You were lonely? You stopped trying a long time ago. You don't talk to me. You don't ask how I am. You come home, eat dinner, go to bed." I felt invisible. "You made me invisible," I said, standing now. "You started shutting me out, Dana. You changed the locks while I was still holding the keys." She looked down. "We haven't been happy in years." "No," I agreed. "But I stayed. I tried. You gave up. And then you made me the problem." "You never fought for us," she said, tears starting to rim her eyes. "Not really. You don't get to say that," I snapped. "Not after what I saw. What I read. You think I didn't want more? You think I didn't look at you every day and wonder what I did wrong? I bent myself trying to keep this house together, keep Blake grounded, keep some piece of us alive." Dana turned her back to me. She was shaking now. "I didn't plan for it to happen," she whispered. "I believe you," I said. "But you let it." She wiped her eyes. "What now?" "Now," I said. "Now we stop pretending." We didn't talk much after that. She moved into the guest room. We kept up the charade for Blake's sake, though I think even he saw through it. He was quiet at dinner. He'd shoot me these strange glances, like he wasn't sure whether to be angry or ashamed. He didn't ask questions, but his silence was louder than anything he could have said. One night, I found him sitting in the garage, legs dangling off the workbench. "You okay?" I asked. He shrugged. "You embarrassed Mom." "Yeah," I said. "Guess I did." "Was it true?" His voice was small. I nodded. He didn't respond right away. Then he said, "Why didn't you leave?" I sat next to him, the old workbench creaking under my weight. Because sometimes, when you love someone, you hold on longer than you should. You convince yourself things can go back to how they were. You hope. He looked down at his shoes. "Are you guys getting divorced?" I didn't answer. He already knew. A week later, Dana filed. She tried to be civil. She said she didn't want things to get ugly. She even offered to split custody 50-50, though Blake was only 2 years from college. I didn't argue. I didn't want the house. Too many ghosts in the walls. I moved into a small 2-bedroom rental a few miles away. Close enough for Blake to visit when he wanted. Far enough to breathe again. The first night in the new place, I unpacked only what I needed. A mattress, a lamp, some clothes, the coffee maker. I didn't bother with decorations. The silence was thick but clean. No tension. No unspoken resentment. Just space. I didn't sleep much, though. The mattress felt like a stranger. My body ached from the move. My thoughts were a mess of memories I didn't ask for. I kept replaying it all. How we started, how it ended. Little moments. Her laugh in college. The way she used to touch my arm when she told a story. The look on her face the first time we saw Blake's sonogram. And then all the other stuff. The late nights. The secrets. The sticky note on my birthday. Victor. Especially Victor. A few days later, I saw him again. At a gas station, of all places. He was standing next to a sleek black Audi, pumping gas while scrolling through his phone. He looked exactly the same. Tan, smug, expensive sunglasses. He looked up and saw me. For a second, he looked like he might pretend he didn't recognize me. Then he gave a small nod. Ronnie, right? Yup. Listen, man. No, I cut him off. Don't. You don't get to listen, man me. He raised his hands, backing off. Fair enough. Just wanted to say it wasn't personal. It never is for people like you, I said. He exhaled sharply. You're right. And I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I didn't answer. Just got back in my truck and drove off. But my hands were shaking the whole way home. Dana didn't last long with him. 2 months, maybe 3. Then she called me one night. Her voice low, fragile. Can you pick Blake up from practice? I'm not feeling well. Sure, I said. You okay? Long pause. No, I didn't ask what happened. I didn't need to. Later that week, Blake told me Victor had someone else. Some yoga instructor or whatever. Dana found out through a mutual friend. I wanted to feel smug. I wanted to feel like she got what she deserved. But I didn't. I just felt tired again. Tired and older than I had the right to feel. Blake stayed with me that weekend. He didn't say much. Just laid on the couch, headphones in, watching reruns of shows he used to laugh at with her. At one point, I asked him, you want to talk about it? He shook his head. So I let it go. I started rebuilding. Slowly. One piece at a time. I fixed up the apartment. Bought a proper couch. Took long walks after work. Even signed up for a local photography class at the community center. Something to give me a reason to leave the house on weekends. I saw Dana at drop-offs and pickups. We were polite. Strangers with shared memories. One day, while handing Blake his bag, she said, you look different. Better or worse? Just lighter, she said, almost wistfully. I nodded. Guess I finally stopped carrying things that weren't mine. The story doesn't end there, of course. Not yet. There's still more to say. More to happen. But that part, I'll save for when you're ready. Fall came early that year. The air turned crisp in September, and the trees in the neighborhood where I lived started glowing with red and gold. I remember thinking how strange it was that everything looked so alive when I was still dragging parts of myself out of the dirt. Blake had started coming over more regularly, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. Some nights he brought schoolwork. Others he just sat on the couch while we watched sports or bad movies. One night, after a late dinner of leftover pizza and root beer, he turned to me and asked, do you think Mom still loves you? I was scraping the last bit of cheese off my plate with a fork. I froze for a second, then set the fork down. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I stopped feeling it a long time ago. Blake nodded slowly. She's been weird lately. Like, quieter. She's going through stuff. Yeah, but it's like she doesn't know what to do without being mad at someone. I looked at him, and for a second, I saw my own younger face in his. Same furrowed brow. Same tired eyes. You don't have to carry that, I told him. That's hers to sort out. He leaned back, rubbing the side of his neck. I know. It's just hard, watching her act like everything's fine when we both know it's not. She'll figure it out, I said. Or she won't. But either way, you'll be okay. And for the first time in months, he smiled. A few weeks later, I ran into Dana again. This time at the grocery store. I was in the frozen aisle, arguing with myself over which kind of frozen lasagna tasted less like regret, when I saw her standing near the end of the row. She didn't notice me right away. Her cart was half empty, and she looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and she was wearing the same oversized hoodie she used to lounge around the house in. She looked normal, almost human. I thought about ducking into the next aisle, but something stopped me. Hey, I said. She turned, surprised. Oh, hey. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Two people who used to know everything about each other and now didn't know where to start. How's Blake? She asked. He's good. Busy with school. She nodded. He doesn't talk much when he's home. He's a teenager. They communicate in grunts and memes. That got a small laugh from her. A real one. We stood there a second longer, neither of us knowing what to say. Then she said, you were right. About what? Everything. I looked at her, really looked at her. There was no malice in her voice. No sarcasm. Just exhaustion and maybe guilt. I didn't want to be right, I said. She nodded, biting her bottom lip. I've been thinking about what you said. About pretending. About holding on too long. I stayed quiet. She looked down at her cart. I don't know who I am anymore. You're not the only one. She blinked quickly, like she was trying to stop herself from crying. I miss who we were, she said. I exhaled slowly. Me too. But I don't think we're those people anymore. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry, Ronnie. For all of it. I was angry, and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. The apology hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't redemption. It didn't fix anything. But it was real. Thank you, I said. That means more than you think. We stood there a little longer, then both nodded and walked away. That night, I lay in bed thinking about how far things had come. Dana wasn't evil. She was flawed, broken in ways she didn't understand and refused to face for too long. I wasn't innocent either. I'd let myself fade into the background. I'd made peace with being tolerated, not loved. That was on me. But we were finally being honest, at least. And sometimes, that's the first real step. The following weekend, Blake and I drove out to the edge of town to look at a used car. He'd been saving from his part-time job at the bowling alley and wanted something cheap he could fix up with me. The car was a rusted old '94 Civic with a busted tail light and a weird smell coming from the vents. He fell in love with it immediately. "Can we do it?" he asked, eyes wide like a little kid again. I looked under the hood, then at the price. "We can do it, but it's going to take work." He grinned. "That's kind of the point." And in that moment, greasy hands and all, I felt like I was getting something back, not just my son, but a part of myself. A few days later, Dana called. Not to argue or discuss custody, just to talk. She said she'd started going to therapy. Said it was weird at first, but it helped. "I think I needed someone to tell me I'm not a villain," she said. "You're not," I replied. "You just got lost." "I thought if I could control everything, I'd feel safe," she admitted. "But all I did was push everyone away." We talked for almost an hour. About the past. About Blake. About nothing in particular. It wasn't closure. Not yet. But it was the start of something different. Maybe respect. Maybe just peace. Whatever it was, it felt better than the silence. Blake and I kept working on the car in the evenings. It became our ritual. Pizza boxes piled up in the garage. Old rock music played from a dusty radio. We argued over tools, cursed at rusty bolts, laughed at how badly the back seat smelled. One night, he looked up from under the hood and said, "I like this version of us." I smiled. "Yeah, me too." Then, after a pause, he added, "I think we're going to be okay." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. November brought in gray skies and early nights. It was the kind of cold that crept into your joints and stayed there, a quiet ache that reminded you winter was coming whether you were ready or not. Blake and I were nearly finished with the Civic. It still looked like hell, paint chipping, the driver's side mirror held together with duct tape, but the engine purred and the heat worked, which was more than we could say for when we first bought it. It became our thing. He'd drive over after school, toss his bag on the couch, and head straight to the garage. Sometimes we talked about real stuff, school, college, how he was feeling. Sometimes we just listened to music and passed each other wrenches. One night, while we were cleaning up, he looked at me and said, "You think Mom's really changing?" I wiped my hands on a rag and thought for a second. "She's trying. That counts for something." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "She asked me if I wanted to do family therapy." "Oh yeah. Yeah." Said she wanted to fix things with me. With us. But, I don't know. What's stopping you? He hesitated. It's hard to talk to her. Like, really talk. She always sounds like she's trying to say the right thing, not the real thing. I nodded. Takes time. She's got walls. Been building them for years. Blake kicked a piece of gravel with his shoe. She used to be cool. Before all the pretending. I didn't say anything. Just gave his shoulder a squeeze. Sometimes that's all a kid needs. Not a lecture. Just to know someone's listening. That weekend, Dana called again. Not about Blake this time. Just to talk. "I've been thinking about everything," she said. "More than I want to honestly." I was on my porch, bundled up in an old hoodie, watching the wind blow leaves across the lawn. "Yeah," I said, lighting a cigarette I'd been pretending to quit. "I still have dreams where we're back in that first apartment," she said. "The one with the leaky faucet and the broken heater. You hated that place." I did, but I loved how simple it was. I stayed quiet. "Do you ever think," she said, "if we just stopped moving forward for 5 minutes, maybe we wouldn't have lost each other?" I took a drag, exhaled slow. "I think about it all the time." There was a long pause. "I never meant to become this version of me," she said. "The bitter one. The resentful one. We all become someone we didn't plan to be," I said. "Question is, what do we do about it now?" Around mid-December, things got weirder. Not bad, weirder. In small, offbeat ways. Dana asked if we could do Christmas together. Not like the old days, not pretending we were still married. Just for Blake. A few hours, some food, maybe a movie. Neutral ground. I hesitated. But then Blake asked me to. "Just this once," he said. "Not for you. For me." So we did it. Christmas Eve at her place. She cooked. Nothing fancy. Just roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans with too much garlic, the way Blake liked them. She even got a little tree and decorated it with old ornaments, some of which still had broken hooks and chipped paint. It was awkward at first. The three of us sitting around the table, chewing quietly, pretending not to remember all the other dinners where words were weapons. But after the second glass of wine, Dana cracked a joke about Blake's awful haircut. He fired back with a jab about her Wine Mom Spotify playlist. I joined in, and for a few minutes, it was like we remembered how to be people together. When Blake went to the kitchen for dessert, she leaned toward me and whispered, "Thank you for showing up." "I always show up," I said. "That was never the issue." She nodded slowly. "I know." That night, back in my apartment, I sat alone by my tiny plastic tree and stared at a picture on the wall. It was from years ago, before Blake was born. Dana and I at a fair, faces lit up by carnival lights. She had cotton candy in one hand, the other wrapped around my arm. I didn't take it down. I didn't hide it. It was part of my story, even the parts that hurt. New Year's came and went without much fanfare. Blake went to a friend's party. Dana called to say Happy New Year around 12:07. I almost didn't pick up, but I figured, why not start the year on a civil note? She sounded sober, calm, maybe a little lonely. "Remember our first New Year's?" she asked. "The one where we got stuck in the elevator?" She laughed. "God, yes. You kept singing that awful Elton John song. I stand by that rendition. You were always better at making the best of things," she said. I wanted to tell her I wasn't sure that was true anymore, but I didn't. We talked for a bit longer, then hung up. I sat in the dark, listening to fireworks crack in the distance, wondering how long I'd been stuck in some emotional elevator waiting for the doors to open. By February, Blake was spending most weekends at my place. Not because he didn't love his mom, but because he said, "It's quieter here. More chill." One night, while he was asleep on the couch, I walked past the garage and caught myself staring at the Civic. It looked almost new now. Well, new enough. Clean paint, new tires, engine humming like a charm. It was more than a car. It was proof that broken things could run again, with patience, with care. I stood there a long time, fingers resting on the hood, thinking about how damn hard it is to rebuild something the right way, and how much harder it is when you're doing it alone. Then I went back inside and sat on the floor next to the couch, just listening to my son snore. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. Spring rolled in early. The Civic purred like a cat, and Blake was talking about applying to schools out of state. I encouraged it. I told him he could handle it, that he was ready, even if, deep down, I knew I wasn't. Dana and I were stable. Not friends, not enemies. Just two people figuring out how to exist without setting each other off. She was still doing therapy, and to her credit, she kept trying with Blake. Sometimes it landed. Sometimes it didn't. But she was showing up, and that counted for something. But then came the fundraiser. Blake's school was hosting this big charity event for college scholarships. Fancy stuff. Alumni, parents, teachers, students, everyone dressed up, everyone pretending they were richer or more important than they really were. Blake asked me to come. "It'd mean a lot," he said. "Mom's gonna be there too." "All right," I said. "Let's make it weird." So I went. I wore my best blazer, the one that hadn't seen daylight since 2014, and even polished my shoes. I showed up with a check in hand, ready to donate what I could. And that's when I saw him. Victor. Standing by the hors d'oeuvres like he was the damn mayor. Dana was next to him. They weren't together, not officially. But the body language was familiar. Too familiar. Her laughing too hard. Him brushing imaginary lint off her shoulder. That smug little smile I remembered from the gas station. I didn't react. I just watched. She saw me a few minutes later and froze for half a second. Then she smiled, small and tight. Walked over. "Hey," she said. "Hey. Didn't know you were coming." Blake asked. She nodded. "Glad you came." We stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, "You look good." "I feel good," I said. And I did. She hesitated. "So, Victor's on the scholarship board now. Just started volunteering." "Of course he is." She frowned slightly. "He's actually trying to do some good, Ronnie." "I'm sure he is." The smile faded from her face. "This doesn't have to be weird." I looked at her. Steady. Calm. "It's only weird if you pretend this is normal." She didn't respond. I gave her a nod and walked away. An hour later, they announced the donors. They called out the names in tiers: bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Applause followed each name. Victor was in the platinum tier, of course. Had probably written some fat check for optics and handshakes. Then they announced a special contributor who'd helped fund a full-ride scholarship for an underprivileged student. My name, Ronald Mayers. The room clapped politely, then louder when they realized how big the donation had been. Even Dana clapped, stunned. Blake's jaw hit the floor. "Dad, what the hell? When did you do that?" I shrugged. "Couple months ago. Set it up after the car project." "You paid for a full ride?" "Figured someone deserved a fresh start. Clean slate." He blinked. "How?" I leaned in, smiling. "Sold some stocks. Cashed out the old joint account I never closed." Turns out, when someone doesn't update the info after a separation, his eyes widened. "Her joint account." I just smiled. After the event, Dana cornered me near the exit. "You emptied the joint investment account," she said quietly. "It was still under my name." "That money was ours," I said. "But you stopped being us a long time ago." I used it for something real. Something good. She stared at me. Angry, maybe. But underneath that, I saw something else. Shame. I trusted you, she said. I tilted my head. Did you? She looked away. I leaned closer. Don't worry. I left you enough to keep your wine subscription going. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. You had your fun, Dana. You burned the bridge, danced on the ashes, and made sure everyone watched. All I did was walk the other way and build something better. That's the difference. Then I walked past her and into the cool spring night. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from her again after that. Not directly, anyway. I knew she was embarrassed. She didn't like being outplayed, especially by someone she thought she'd broken down to nothing. But that's the thing about people like her. They only notice your strength when you use it to walk away. Blake got accepted into a college out of state engineering program. He was over the moon. We took a trip together that summer, just the two of us. Old highway, windows down, Civic humming beneath us like a dog that never let us down. One night, at a diner outside Flagstaff, he looked at me and said, "You're really different now." Good different. He nodded. Yeah, lighter. Like you dropped something heavy. I smiled, sipping my coffee. I did. He paused. Do you think you'll ever fall in love again? I thought about it. I might, I said. But not with someone who asks for water and forgets the cake. He grinned. Fair. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even about hurting Dana. It was about reclaiming my dignity. She tried to humiliate me on my birthday, in front of our son and a stranger, treating me like a ghost in my own life. I could have yelled. I could have scorched the earth. Instead, I smiled. I rebuilt. I donated her guilt to someone who deserved hope. And I kept the best part of us, Blake. That's the sweetest kind of revenge. Because the best way to win is to outgrow the war.